Our next speaker is Sergeant Scott Soland, and he's a CIT. Let's give him a round of applause. And before I ask your first question, can you tell us very briefly what CIT stands for?
CIT is our Crisis Intervention Team. It can also stand for Crisis Intervention Training, which we're doing a little bit of both. And it's where Hope for Three kind of came in with our Crisis Intervention Training.
I think that's important to know. So thank you very much for that. What are some behavioral issues that you think people need to know about or they need to know how to react to?
Like my behavioral issues? Do we have-
This time, not you.
Police officers typically respond to calls for service, and that's when things are not going very well, correct? Nobody ever calls us when you just took cookies out of the oven. Nobody does. But when things go really bad is when you call, and usually when we show up, that's when things are bad. Things that we need when we show up is police officers are typically control freaks, right? We need to be in control. Kind of some personality issues there for us, but when we arrive at your house or wherever we find you, we need someone else to help us be in control, right? When we arrive and the whole family is in chaos, then we have some issues, right? In order to calm things down and part of the crisis intervention training, right, for our crisis intervention team is actually teaching police officers how to identify family members who are calm and can help us figure out what the triggers are for the kiddos or the calming mechanisms so we can help calm things down. So if there's one thing I can say is that when we do show up, we need help trying to control the environment. So we don't wind up making mistakes and putting hands on somebody that we don't need to put hands on. And we can actually slow things down and come to a peaceful resolution.
Thank you. So when we're talking about difficulties that you have to deal with in law enforcement, how has the lack of funding attributed to that?
Well, the lack of funding it starts with the training. I've been a police officer in Fort Bend County for 23 years, and for 20 of those years, we didn't have any training dealing with people who were in crisis. And crisis is a pretty big, is pretty broad because it deals with people who are substance abusers, people who have a mental illness, and people who are IDD or on the autism spectrum. When they reach that point where they're having a meltdown, that's when we get involved, and we haven't had any training around that until now. And we actually received that training as part of the 1115 waiver, I think they mentioned down there, is where we got the funding to provide the training. And here in Fort Bend County, we have, when I started this project back in 2012, started working on it, we got a commitment from every police chief, the sheriff, and every constable in Fort Bend County to train all the first responders on it's a 40-hour mental health training class that I teach at our Gus George Law Enforcement Academy. To date, I've been teaching the class since 2014, and we've trained over 800 police officers in the Houston area. And in Fort Bend County, we're about 80% complete with each agency.
So how can families and law enforcement work together?
Well, that's a really good question because families tend to believe that police officers are like these. They're stuck in a patrol car and they're not really humans, right? That we're like superhuman and we don't eat or drink or we don't have issues or stuff like that. It's completely opposite. We're people just like you are, and we have feelings. Believe that. We have feelings, right? I know. Thank you.
He needed that. Yeah, he needed that.
We actually, we're people just like everybody else, and when we put the uniform on, we're out. Everybody says that we put our life on the line every day, and that, well, kind of. We do we eat a lot of donuts and cookies and stuff like that, but in 23 years, I've only been shot at once, so. It's not every day that we deal with that, but every day we do deal with people. And how we can work together is getting to know each other, right? So how do you get the police to come to your house without dialing 911, right? Every police agency in Texas is going back to a community policing model. All right, so in your area, in your neighborhood, there is usually one patrolman that works at that area every day. All right, and you can call your local police agency and you can get in touch with the patrol supervisors, and you can have those officers or deputies come by your house just to visit. Imagine that. Because typically, I mean, in the years I've been working, the only time I got to see people is when I stopped them when they're speeding, right?
He's not pointing to me. So, yes, and I live in the land of sugar. So, yes, I see my police officers coming by all the time. And I want to say thank you for your service. Angelique gave you a pat. I think you needed that. But thank you for your service. I mean, that's a lot of years. And I know the guys out here in Fort Bend, you guys really do love your community. I have one last question for you. How can you working with Hope for Three continue to help you to continue to be a positive advocate for people and for families dealing with autism?
Like I was talking about earlier, our training, our 40-hour class that we put people through, prior to the last couple of years, we didn't have any. We didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't even know what autism was. Having Hope for Three come out and talk to Samantha comes out and visits with our officers. It started off as like a 15-minute presentation, right? Is what I was going to get them to touch on autism, and it turned into like an hour and a half because the police officers that are in the class don't want her to leave. They just keep asking questions. And
well, that's because she's cute.
True, but she's very engaging, and it's.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yes, I was being
that was-
facetious, of course. Yes.
That's something that I've worked with a lot of these guys for 20 years, and I had no idea that they had a kid on the spectrum because they don't talk about it. They're either where they're embarrassed or ashamed or whatever it was. One of the things that our training does is it makes it okay. It makes it okay to have a child on the spectrum. It makes it okay to have autism. It makes it okay to have a mental illness. And we have to accept that. That's part of the human condition. And we're sensitizing our police officers to understand that now and to respect that. So it's really an awesome training program, and I can't tell you how we've benefited from Hope for Three coming out and just talking with our police officers because they really get engaged in the conversation, and I've got a lot of positive feedback from it.
Thank you very much. Sergeant Scott Solon. Okay, Jorge, can you please tell me the correct way to say your last name since I wasn't good the first time?
No, you did great.
I did?
It was Carrillo.
Oh, no, I can't do that. It sounds so pretty when you say it. I don't want to say it now because it sounds beautiful when you say it.
Maybe with some jalapeno.
Yes, I do like jalapenos. I'm Caribbean, so I like jalapenos. So this very talented man, and I apologize, Jorge oh man, I'm not going to even want to say it after
Jackie,
he said.
let me intervene. I'm the other half.
And no wonder you're cute.
He married me because I knew how to pronounce his
Yes,
name.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can I intervene before Jorge because I want to follow up. I'm Dr. Hebet, by the way. I want to follow up on what the sergeant said. We raise an autistic youngster. I drive to College Station every 2 weeks. Most of you probably are living with autism. Living with it and diagnosing it, it was a huge, huge awakening for us. And one of the things I experienced with Houston police officer, our children have meltdowns. You put them in a car seat. You never know if they will sit in the car seat. If they're nonverbal, they're going to hit their head if they need to potty. Just last night, my son, every night for 1 hour, he's now 15. We have to take him in the car every night, and I was praying, please don't let a police officer stop me. The last 15 minutes was about to be a meltdown. He needed to go to the bathroom, and we were out 15 minutes away, and I kept saying, I had to speed. I normally don't speed, but talk about speeding. Twice heading to College Station, a police officer stopped me. I was 15 minutes away. And what he did was very nice, and I really have to bring this as a positive and congratulate the training that's being done. The young man asked me, and he was very, very young, is there an emergency? And here was my son about to have a meltdown. And I said, officer, I'm so sorry. I'm about 10 minutes away from my older son's apartment. He's about to have a meltdown. And that gentleman just gave me a warning. He says, okay, but be careful. It happened a second time, and he needed to go to the bathroom. I learned to travel with pee-pee cups now, so that makes a difference. And I've taught him how to hand me the cup, and I know how to drive and put him to pee. But twice, I have been pulled over, and to my surprise, the officer says, go ahead. All I had to say is, look, my son is autistic, and he's about to have a meltdown. Okay, be careful. I did not get it. And I don't know if I'm going to push my luck and it'll happen again and they'll let me go. But I really have to appreciate that training. And I really, okay, now you can go to Jorge.
That's a typical wife, right? They interrupt. No, thank you for that story. That's a good story. Hey, I'm sorry, I just have to say that. But that's a great story, though. Thank you very
Yes,
much for sharing
I needed
that.
to share that.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Jorge, he has a lot of acronyms and a very lengthy bio. And by the way, all of the bios are in your programs. I really do encourage you to read each and every one. I mean, we're so blessed to have these panelists because they're very, very smart and informed. Jorge, he's the PhD LSSP of the Houston Autism Center, and his wife, now you have a different last name, right? That's awesome. I did that too when I was married. See how that worked out.
I didn't want to be Dr. Mrs. Carrillo, so.
Oh, okay. Oh,
so
that's
he
sweet.
accepted it, thank God.